Well, good evening and welcome again. I feel like Groundhog's Day for me, and hopefully it's maybe the first time for you. But I'm Mike Sitta, proud superintendent at Toms River Regional Schools, and I'm very grateful for everybody coming out tonight to have a little discussion about a couple things. Tonight, our goals are to cover where we are, kind of the state of Toms River Regional Schools when it comes to our budget and our programs, our mindset on how we move forward through the hurdles and the struggles that present themselves in front of us, and then talk about regionalization and how that fits into that model. So we're going to kind of just go real slow through our story. This should only take about 45 minutes to 50 minutes of a discussion, and hopefully we can get to some good questions. Now, the point of today is not to influence you one way or the other, but to have a discussion and explain the impacts that are happening in our school district now and the impacts of what regionalization in Toms River with Seaside Heights would look like. So the questions that you have or you want to present today, we'll come around and just hand you the microphone and you ask them and I'll answer. It'll help continue us to fill out our FAQs to get it out to our public. I think this is meeting like number 37 for me in the last 3 weeks. So I think we are getting the message out. All this stuff has been recorded and continue to be able to be played throughout the community. So I'm very thankful for your time tonight and our explanation. Before we get started, I do want to recognize we have 2 board members with us here tonight. We have Ms. Melissa Morrison from Beechwood and our board president, Kathy Egan from Toms River. And I know Mrs. Howe is at spaghetti night at Washington Street and will be here a little bit later. But our board has been extremely supportive through this process and at all our meetings over the last couple of weeks. And it's really appreciated because the things that we're going to discuss and the information that you have and the decisions that this community need to make really are about the future dynamic of Toms River Regional Schools and how it affects our kids. And that's the most important thing that we put forward every day is how are our kids affected and what opportunities they're going to continue to have and grow as we move forward. So I'm going to start with a little kind of doom and gloom, and that is the state of the state and where our budget is at and the problems that we face. And that is one problem that exists in and itself above and beyond what regionalization is. And I'm going to kind of get to that because the two things are separate issues, but tied together a little bit in how they possibly could solve those issues. All right. So our budget. Most of the public or most of you know and understand that over the last 7 years, Toms River Regional Schools has not gotten its fair shake when it comes to state aid funding and the funding formula that has happened in Toms River. You know the history, it's well documented. There's been bus trips to Trenton to protest. We are $137 million less in state aid than we were when S2 started in was 2018, 2018-19. We have cumulatively lost in state aid that goes to our programs $137 million. All the time, as the taxpayers in this room, you know, because of that law, we've had to raise our taxes to the maximum of the 2% cap every year. Your taxes increased in town, though our aid has gone down 137 million. We have lost 9%. Am I holding it too close? No. 59% of our state aid over that time. Meanwhile, our enrollment has only dropped about 6%. So you kind of do that math, it just doesn't make sense. So we know something is wrong. The state knows that something is wrong. They've sought out to rush to see this bill to its end, and this year is the end of S2 and what it has done to the funding formula, but it's gotten Toms River to the point of no return. You know, over time we have reduced our staff over 200 staff members. Thank you. Over 200 staff members. Programs, different initiatives for our children have been put on hiatus. We've had to reallocate dollars for different things just to get us what we need to do. And now last year we came to a kind of a crossroads. We were $13.4 million short last year, if you recall. This time last year, this speech, when I was walking around to all the schools and the PTOs and in the paper at our board meetings, I was talking about we have a $13.4 million problem because we just lost $14.4 million in state aid. But at the same time, we also stayed committed to our community and we said, Toms River cannot cut another thing from its budget because if we do, we're taking opportunities away from our children, which they don't deserve. We're putting more pressure on our. We need a new sound system at High School East. Yes, High School East, like, yes, we need a new sound system. Ask Mr. Doring. And we made a commitment to kind of draw a line in the sand. And last year we presented a budget where we knew we were $13.4 million short. So this time last year, when we're going into next week's budget hearing, we came up with a budget that had all our expenses on one side and all of our revenue on the other side, which is our tax allocation from the 4 municipalities, our state aid, our grants from federal and IDEA monies that go into balance the expense side of our budget. And we said we are $13.4 million short and it needs to be filled somehow, some way. So in that process, there was a lot of lobbying, a lot of discussing, a lot of horse trading all across the state from districts like us and ourselves with senators and stakeholders and decision makers and legislators and the governor himself. And in turn, they turned around and they created a bill and they turned around and gave back something. I'm going to give you some buzzwords as we go along. Stabilization aid, right? They gave us 66% of the $14.4 million back to the tune of just under $10 million. And now we had a $3.4 million problem in Toms River. So as you recall, we worked with our local communities and our local government, and we were able to sell some trees that remain trees, all right, with Green Acre dollars through the township. And they bought some property next to Silver Bay so it could never be developed. And we got those dollars and we balanced our budget without cutting kid programs. But what's the downside of that? The benefit of that is we opened up the year and we didn't do anything to our children. We continued to increase opportunities for our kids. And by the way, as I give you doom and gloom and all those things, I can't begin to express the amount of pride and just pure emotion that I have for our district, our staff, and your kids and what they're able to accomplish in the midst of all these things happening over the last 7 years. Because there's some really great stuff going on. We talk about it and you hear it and you see it on the Instagram posts from the kids, but we have improved our attendance. We're increasing our scores. We have built programs in the midst of funding issues by being creative, by going out and getting grants with our community partners, by putting pre-vocational programs in now 2 high schools, hopefully a third coming up here at High School East sometime soon. We have changed different strands in our academies. We have figured things out because we are TR, right? We are that engine that you are, I should say, that engine that drive the opportunities for our kids. So as I talk about the issues and the hurdles that are in front of us, let's not lose sight of the fabric of this community and what we are and who we are and how we get to our goals and continue to get to our goals over and over again, which is why we're here tonight talking about those things. Because if I didn't think that we could get there collectively together, then we would just fold up shop, lock the doors, and turn around. But we're not doing that. We're not doing that because we will persevere because our kids are worth every bit of it, and they don't deserve one cut or one opportunity in their programming. So this year's turmoil, because stabilization is a one-time fix of a problem. See? So they give you that money, that stable, that buzzword, stabilization. And next year you get your budget, but the stabilization they gave you is gone. So that $14.4 million shows back up. Plus, they took another 2.8. That's 17.2. Plus, to survive over the last couple of years, we had that ESSER, those ESSER COVID dollars that the federal government gave us. Because we've lost $137 million, a few years ago, we took $6 million of that a year, put that in added district special education tuition. Guess what we don't get this year? ESSER dollars. There's another $6 million. And real quick, based on all the different challenges, this year we faced $26.5 million problem before we opened the doors in September. The mindset hasn't changed. Toms River Regional Schools is the lowest spending district in the state of New Jersey. What does that mean? It's not a good thing. It means we spend less money on our kids' education than any other district in the state of New Jersey. And we've had to do that because of the $137 million cuts and because we've always been efficient in Toms River and prudent to our taxpayers. So as a result of all those things, we are the lowest spending, and it's nothing we are proud of. But it makes you wonder if you can manage, being the lowest spending in the district and getting all those dollars taken away from you. And you look around the state and you don't want to pit winners versus losers, but you look at other districts that have just seen the governor tout a budget where he put it an extra $780 million or $900 million into public education to 420 some odd districts, while 154 districts lost $107 million. So $1 billion extra of our money went other places, and yet here we are, the lowest spending, $26.5 million shy. So we have options, right? Not many, none of them good, but we have options. So how do we tackle $26.5 million? What do? Well, the first thing that we continue to do and will always do and always have done is to continue to work like we did last year and the year before that and the year before that and so on, and with all the different stakeholders and telling our story and knocking on the doors of senators and legislatures across this state. It has been like Frog and Toad's Wild Ride, if you remember that way back in Disney World, with Mr. Doring, myself, and our attorney across the state, even on the weekends. I'm having St. Patty's Day party in Patterson, just so I can get 15 minutes with the Education Committee chairwoman, and we're doing that. And we're making connections, and we're networking, and we're telling our story, and it's understood. So option one is they put together some kind of saving grace bill that addresses our $26.5 million problem. That hasn't happened in 7 years. I mean, we got 66% last year, but if you got stabilization aid this year, even if it was $20 million, all you're making next year is a $40 million problem. You guys understand me? Right. So we're really doing a good job, I think, of educating, and I really do feel confident that the decision makers understand finally after 7 years. The intent of S2 was to eliminate what they called adjustment aid, right? And extraordinary aid, not extraordinary aid, equalization aid from districts' funding, right? Well, that was when they initially put out the formula and say, this is what Toms River is going to lose 7 years ago, it was $10 million. 10 million, 137 million. What happened? You guys were a little off on your calculations, right? Because if it was 10 million, we would have buckled our belts and we would have got through it. But, it was 2020 when we passed that mark, and we lost the rest of the money after that. And the hits just keep coming, but we could sit here and we could put our heads down again, close the doors and turn around and walk out. or we could do something about it. So number one, we we make change happen. We make change happen. And we won't stop until change has happened. We just need it to happen before September, somehow, some way, or a combination of all these different things. Number two, and because the state Department of Education recognizes that we're the lowest spending district in the state of New Jersey, we would be a good candidate for a loan. Okay, what does that mean? So you apply for a loan for the Department of Education for the $26.5 million to make your budget equalized. And now we have to pay that back on the taxpayers, right? So that's extra burden on a community that's done nothing except the right thing for kids and their community over and over and over again. We put that burden back on you by getting the loan. And then again, just like stabilization aid, if you give me a loan of $26.5 million, what happens next year? I need that loan and a loan to make up for that loan, and then another, whatever our increase is. And you ought to you could look at Lakewood and you could look at the neighboring districts and watch the pattern of how that happens to these districts. I think Lakewood is up to like $200 million worth of loans that they can't pay back. But that's not it. It comes with other things. We learned today it possibly could come with, if I want that loan, I have to go out first and ask the taxpayers for that money first. And what if that question failed? What if that question failed? What if I put $26.5 million, and I wasn't even going to mention this because it really pissed me off today. This information happened today. All right, sorry. If I asked for $26.5 million, and let me tell you what that looks like in Toms River, because we laugh and we joke, and I'm sorry, guys, for saying those things. I'm supposed to be the role model in the room. I apologize. Yes, yeah, thank you. $26.5 million. That's over 400 more positions. 400 more staff positions in our district. 20% more, 20% of our current workforce. That's every non-mandated thing in our budget. Let me tell you what those things are. Every co-curricular and curricular and extracurricular activity like athletics, plays, anything clubs, activities, gone. That is AP classes. Those are academies. It's kindergarten, which is strange to me, non-mandated by the state of New Jersey. Okay, wow, right? Kindergarten, gone. And we still wouldn't reach $26.5 million. Now, if I put that on a ballot for this community to decide, and you passed it, and you said no, by law, I have to cut it. We're not doing that. I don't care what they say. We are not doing that. And we're not cutting a position or a program for our kids. We're not. So we'll figure it out, right? And if the phone rings, I have the phone right here next to Mr. Doran because I'm waiting for the governor's office to call me now because after that decision made, we kind of created holy heck. Now I'm going to use my good voice, my daddy voice. Holy heck in Trenton. And honestly, I just think it's the uneducated and short-sightedness of people that just don't see the big picture. And once we explain it and once we figure it out, we'll get solutions. And a new sound system. No, third time's a charm. All right. So we'll get there. All right. Option two, a loan. Doesn't sound like a great one, right? It also comes with a state fiscal monitor, by the way. So let's say we get the loan, we get the whole 26.5 million. We didn't cut anything. We get somebody in the district, then it gets to make those decisions. That's not me and not the board. Now, being, again, the lowest spending district in the state of New Jersey, and working really well with our colleagues that are in similar situations across Ocean County. Okay, because this seems to be a geographical disease. This funding cut, it just seems to happen in Ocean County and other counties around us. It's an anomaly, is what it is. And they have, Jackson has a fiscal monitor. And Jackson does a fantastic job running their school district, and those kids deserve opportunities just like our kids deserve opportunities. And that fiscal monitor goes to work every day in Jackson and calls the state and tells them they need more money. So you're not funding us. You send a monitor there, and they turn around and tell you what we've been telling you the whole time. We don't have a spending problem. We have a revenue problem. And you made it, right? You made it. So option two, a loan possibility. All right, we're going to get into regionalization in option three and how that affects our budget. But again, this is the part where I'm not influencing you to do one thing or another, because option three in regionalization did not come about because of our budget crisis. And I want to spend a couple minutes to explain what it is, how it affects children, right? How it affects children, because that's the most important. I'm talking a lot about money. I'm talking a lot about money. And our kids are hearing me talk a lot about money. And I want them and I want all of you to know that I'm talking about money because that money is for the kids. They go hand in hand. We're in public education. We need dollars to support programs and to support teachers. Now, before I tell you the story about regionalization, I want to tell you about how decisions are made in Toms River. And I'm sure, and I'm confident, and I know because I've worked here for 25 years, that these are how they're always been made. Okay? Number one, if something is going to happen, it has to be good for kids. Number two, if it's good for kids, how does it support our staff to make it good for kids? And number three, how does it affect our taxpayers? And if it's cost effective to do one and two and doesn't hurt our taxpayers and our community, then we should do it. That's how every decision on everything that I make and present to the board happens. So now I want to talk to you about regionalization. Now, regionalization with Seaside Heights came about not because there's a funding crisis in Toms River. It came about because in Seaside, from 2012 and Superstorm Sandy and 2013 when the boardwalk, if you remember, caught on fire in Seaside, Seaside Heights Borough received a lot of transitional aid dollars to rebuild their community from those two tragic events, natural disasters. Part of the requirement for them to receive those dollars was for Seaside Heights to start looking around for different shared service agreements with different entities, like possibly Toms River, on how they could save money by doing things more effectively. Okay? So they reached out to the Board of Education a couple years prior to me being superintendent, and they agreed, Toms River agreed to go into a feasibility study to do a send-receive relationship with the Hugh J. Boyd School, and then follow the study with a regionalization one. It's important that we understand the difference between the two, okay? So send receive is not what you're going to be voting on April 16th. Send receive would have meant that all of the Hugh J. Boyd children, the 175 to 180 students, pre-K through sixth grade, would come to Toms River along with their teachers. Seaside Heights tax base would pay a per pupil cost for those children and those teachers to come to Toms River. Okay? So there would have been a savings about $1 million to Seaside Heights and about a profit, I should say profit, but again, we're talking about kids, but a profit to Toms River regional schools of about $500,000 a year. Now remember how we make decisions. Is it good for kids? So about the first month into my my job as superintendent, in comes this send receive study. And the send receive study said these kids and these teachers are going to come over, you're going to absorb them, you're going to get $500,000 more, we're going to save $1,000,000. Let's do this. It's great, it's great, it's great. And I said, wait a minute. You're going to send 175 kids over here to learn how it is and get the opportunities and be with peers in Toms River from pre-K to 6th grade. They're going to come to 2 different schools. And then in the middle of 1/3 of their middle school year, we're going to put them on a bus and they're going to go to Central Region. Not good for kids. You know, I think any one of us in this room would have saw that and said, not good for kids. So that was a hard no. Nobody ever heard about send receive because that was a no. We're not doing that. You know, no, brought it to the board. No, great. Go back to the drawing board. Now the study continues. We're part of the study. And this past November, we get a study that comes back on regionalization. Now, regionalization is different. Regionalization is what we are. We know regionalization. We're one of the largest school districts in the state of New Jersey. We know the benefits, strengths, and weaknesses of being large. But regionalization is inviting another community to be part of your school community. And along with that comes the entire tax levy, right? So right now, forget Seaside Heights, we have Toms River, Beechwood, South Toms River, and Pine Beach. Every one of those towns has a school tax levy, and those tax levies come to one pot, okay, and it gets distributed over all 14,700 and some of our children to have equal opportunities amongst our 4 municipalities in our 19 schools, 18, 19, including our ELC. That's how that works. So adding a Seaside Heights to that formula would increase those dollars and opportunities for all of those children. But again, let's go back to the decision-making process. So Toms River gets Seaside Heights as part of a regionalization community. And initially, because the enrollment has been dropping so drastically in Seaside Heights, okay, initially it called for the closing of H.J. Boyd School and those students to come to where we have room, which would have been Eastover Elementary School, okay? So is it good for kids? Well, we're going to have children from pre-K all the way through 12. There'll be continuity of instruction. We can follow the programs. They'll have their similar peer groups. They will get the benefits of a large district and all the resources that go along with them. There will not be a demographic shift in Toms River. That demographic shift has happened organically. Look around our schools. We are now 41% a minority population in our school, which is a large change from what it was 7 or 8 years ago. We are 36% free and reduced free and reduced lunch. Now you look at Seaside and you go, huh, but they're like 70% and 80% and 90%. Yes, but that's 175 kids. We have 15,000. It's not even close. You know, it's one of the arguments I made in Trenton the other day when I testified, and how the senators from Newark and Patterson and Bayonne and Monmouth County were appalled that our disadvantaged low-income students in Long Branch, who were 80% free and reduced, lost $10 million after gaining X amount of dollars. And again, losing $10 million is terrible. Shouldn't happen to any kids or any programs. But Long Branch has like 5,000 or less students. Our minority population in free and reduced lunch and our ELL population alone has more kids in it than the entire district of Long Branch. Are you saying that those kids deserve it and our kids don't? They don't look at things that way. They look at percentages. But when you talk to them and they understand we're talking about 6,000 kids over 5,000 kids, it kind of hits a little bit home a little bit quicker. So are there going to be any changes to kids or more opportunities in a regional, in our opinion, in my opinion, the students benefit, right? So it's good for kids. Check. What about our staff in a regionalization? Well, we get to take the entire Seaside Heights staff. We would put them where those kids are. We would be able to lower class sizes in the Eastover because we'd be adding sections, right? So you would add 7 or 8 different sections in Eastover Elementary School, K to 6 or pre-K to 6, and you would drop those class sizes from 25 to 22 or 26 to 21 based on the certain grade levels and those children that are in it. And that would give our staff more supports to the good job, to the great work for all of our children. So does it benefit our staff? Check. Now what about our taxpayers? How does it benefit our taxpayers? Well, if you look at the feasibility study or you just listen to what I'm saying, we'll start with Seaside Heights. Seaside Heights in the first 10 years and the 10 years only, and then they stop their savings, would save about $9 million in a regionalization with Toms River. Toms River would save $35 million in that same 10 years. Beechwood would save $2 million in those same years. South Toms River would save about $480,000 in those same 10 years. And Pine Beach would save about $680,000 in those same 10 years. Okay? So is it good for the taxpayer? Absolutely. Check. Now, does that mean you're getting a credit on your homeowners and property tax in Toms River? No. We are $26.5 million in the hole. But every year you're going to get between $7 and $8 million in a tax levy to help all of our kids without hitting the taxes of Toms River, Beechwood, South Toms River, and Pine Beach. And after 10 years, depending on what the enrollment is in Seaside Heights, and their taxes start to go up based on evaluations, that's what you call sustainable revenue, not stabilization aid, right? We are now adding to the bucket, not doubling the debt every year. So what are some of the other solutions that people are talking about? Well, they talk about, and I think we read an article, and by the way, I just want to kind of like debunk it. The governor said that Toms River should close schools, right? You guys read that one? All right. I'm not a fan of S2. I'm not going to say I'm not a fan of the governor, but the situation that we're in. But he did not say that. He did say that districts who lost S2 should consider closing schools, but he did not tell Toms River to do so. Okay, he didn't. And if he did, what I would tell him is that over the last 7 years, even though enrollment has gone down 1,300 students, we have gone down in our staffing and our sizes with it. So 1,300 students at 30 per class is like 45 classrooms that we've reduced. Now, in that same time in Toms River, I talked about how we've changed as a community, right? In that same period of time, that's not the only number that should be counted in enrollment. Our special ed population, which costs a lot more money to educate, has gone up 20%, which has added in those line items 45% more dollars, which in real money is $17.6 million more. Our ESL population has increased about 343%, or 163% in that budget line, and another $1 million more. So, and when you have that population expanding in Toms River, and those children deserve to be in district with the resources that they have, you have to reallocate your dollars to accommodate those things. So we've added, if you take what it is for a class size of special education between 9 and 12 per student, we've added more classrooms than we've taken away because of our enrollment drop, because of what our needs are. People got to pay attention to the needs too, not just look at big numbers. So again, that's what we would say to that. And that's what we have said to that. So I've said a lot. And I think it's time for me to stop talking and start answering questions, right? So, how about questions? Anybody got any questions about um, regionalization, about our budget issues, about anything that's going on in Tom's River at the time? Yes.
So will class sizes for kindergarten, specifically Eastover, get larger with Seaside coming over?
So, yeah, I'm glad this is where I get like talking fatigue and I leave out a few points, right? So, let's get back to what's good for kids. So, as we've gone through this process and as the wheel turns and changes daily, uh, a couple weeks ago we were able to convince the mayor and the school board to keep Hugh J. Boyd School open for up to 5 years or until their enrollment drops below 125. So it's not even going to be a factor. But when they do, if they come and whatever the numbers are at the time when they come over, no, the class sizes will go down, not up, because we get to take their teachers with them. Okay?
Okay, so with Seaside becoming part of Tom's River, the children that are currently on the island, Lavalette, um, Manilokan, will they now be eligible to go to Seaside?
Excellent question. Love the question. Um, and again, I'm all about what's good for kids and the continuity of education. So this is something that we discuss and certainly something that we would offer to those families if they chose. But if they're already currently enrolled in Eastover where they're going now, then we would allow them to continue where they're going. Because even in Central Regional, let's just say you're a seventh or an eighth grader or in high school in Central Regional, and this happens, and Tom's River you become part of Tom's River Regional Schools. There's a transition period built into this, so kids don't get hurt, right? So if you're in ninth grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade, and you're at Central Regional and you want to finish out in Central Regional, we will pay tuition back to Central Regional for you to stay there. Once you leave a building, then you come to your district, right? So if you were an eighth grader, you would come to High School East. If you were a sixth grader, you would come to Intermediate East. But if you were a seventh grader, you'd have the option to stay at Central Middle School and then come to High School East. And if you're already in the high school, you get to stay all the way through if you choose. So it would phase out over time. Any other questions? Good questions. Thank you. Here. Oh, on a state aid loan? That's a Mr. Doring question. We have no idea. We wouldn't be able to pay it back anyway. How about that? How about them apples? Come put padlocks on our doors. We can't pay the bill. Yeah, I don't know. Whitaker? I know. Sure. Yep. If what goes to litigation? Seaside Heights Board of Education and their attorney. It wouldn't be because he's already resigned, and we're not in possession of that Board of Education or that district. So their Board of Education would never be our Board of Education. So that would be Seaside. We would not have anything to do with that. Nope. It's all right. Deemer. Yep. Yep. Hmm. Okay, well, it goes by percentage. All right. Now, the reason why that was a request to the commissioner is to get that option. So what happens is, and let me just explain this for a second. So let's just say we pass the referendum, and Seaside Heights would obviously be entitled to a seat on the Board of Education, right? So we have a 9-member board, and we would go to a 10-member board. Has anybody ever been to my board meetings and see how how easy it is to pass things sometimes? Having an even number on the board really isn't a good idea. So that the question to Mr. Deemer, the Commissioner Deemer, was, would that be an option? Because what would have to happen is we needed that answer so we could present it to the board to have that be an option to either go to 11, 10, or reduce a number of the board and stay at 9. So if that happens, the discussions then take place with the commissioner and our own Board of Education, and then it would go out, we're pretty sure, it would go out on a public vote to vote on that item. Right. Well, those are your like 3 options, right? So to get approval of the 3 options and to make this decision, we would hate to make a decision as a board and to find out you can't do that. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. No, I didn't. But this is what happens with fatigue, right? This is what happens with talking fatigue. Mrs. Whitaker, thank you. You're gonna where's Mr. Baxter? Give her one of those tickets. Thank you. um, so we talked a lot about regionalization, right? So there is another part, and when we talk about now, and I'm glad we kind of did it that way, and I appreciate you because we 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 separate the issue of our budget and regionalization. But there is now a budget caveat that come along with regionalization. All right. And that is a bill that was passed last August by the governor into law, S 3950. Now, S 3950 is a law that came about because last year, when those huge number cuts came out from across the state on that year's budget, districts like ours who lost 14.4, we were crying, everybody was crying. Freehold Regional was in the paper a lot crying that they had to cut courtesy busing, right? I don't know if anybody remember reading those articles, but they they really were upset that they were going to lose courtesy busing. So two of the senators in the area, Senator Gopal and Senator Zwicker, wrote this bill and then had a matching bill in the assembly that said if you meet these criteria, you would be eligible to get your aid back that was cut for the last 2 years, right? So to us, that would be $17.2 million. So we looked at that and we're like, how does this apply to us? Well, the criteria figured this has got to be a slam dunk. We're one of the seventh or eighth largest districts in the state of New Jersey. We're the lowest spending district in the state of New Jersey. So what could the criteria possibly be? Well, the criteria was you have to be below the state average by 15% or more in administrative costs per pupil. Well, we're the lowest spending, so we're we're well below that number. So we do check. Uh, you have to be under adequacy. Another buzzword, adequacy. Adequacy is the number, the dollar amount that the state funding formula, SFRA, says that we should be spending in our district on children education. We're under adequacy. Does everybody know by how much in a year? I know you know how much, Ms. Plaza. You're biting your lip. $91 million a year under adequacy. That's their number, not ours. 91. We should be spending to give our kids a thorough and efficient education. It really does sound criminal. I know, because we think it is. And so we are, check, we reach that. And the last one is you have to be a regional school district. And okay, we are. But the fine print was in the bill that you have to be a regional school district with 5 municipalities. So guess how many districts qualified for S3950 last year? One, freehold. If they made it 4 municipalities, guess how many districts in the whole state of New Jersey, based on the other criteria, would have gotten it? Two. You know, here we are, you know, on the other side, no prom date on the other side of the door, kicking, not us. All right. So, what would regionalization do with S3950? And why is it important to pass it this year on like an April 16th vote as opposed to waiting till September? Because our fiscal year ends June 30th. And if we pass it in this fiscal year, we would qualify for those 2 years. So that's another $17.2 million. So if you take the $17.2 million, some of the breakage in the front end, now that we're keeping the school open, there are more expenses to running that building for 5 years, but it's what's good for kids. We still have millions and millions and millions of dollars of savings for the future of our communities, but we're still going to be short, which is why it's really a combination of all three things, right? Get out there, tell your story, let the Department of Education know and the state legislators know where we are hurting and how they can help us. You know, can they help us in special education? Can they help us in ESL? Can they help us in mental health budget items? These are all things they can do if they want to. You know, so we are building our case to get those things, and we're going to remain optimistic. At the end of the day, we will get to that 26.5 by hook or by crook, because that's our job and our kids deserve it, right? So we're going to get there. Uh, Again, this is for our community to decide if regionalization is something that you want to do. I encourage everybody on the 16th to get out and vote. It's between 1:30 and 8 p.m. We will have a half day of instruction that day, so we don't have to go remote. Schools will be closed, because that's another thing on our list. Get the stupid polling places out of our buildings so we can educate our children. You know, I mean, like, we don't know. Sometimes we have the tail wagging the dog. But again, we will persevere and we'll move through it. And if there's no more questions, is there any more questions? Oh, oh, Mrs. Engelhardt. All right, go ahead. Oh, Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry. You both have questions?
If we say yes to this bill, we vote yes, are my taxes still going up 2% every year after this?
Yeah, your taxes are going up 2% regardless until we are out of S2 and we are whole. So the answer to that is yes. It's a law. We have to.
Okay. My concern that I do want to express is that we are,
What's that?
well, I saw you talking.
No, I was just trying to. No second.
As a taxpayer,
Mhm.
I had 3 children who went through the school. My last one's in senior year, you know this, and best experience with you as a principal and the other teachers in the school system. I'm very grateful. But the way I'm seeing what's happening to this town, it's telling me it's time to get out of Dodge. So I want to phrase it this way. To me, this is just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. The problem is, where is all the freaking money going? Whose back pocket is it going into? I'm not saying Tom's River, the state, somebody's pocketing the money. So what are we doing as a community to fight? We're just sitting back and just letting this happen. In this case, I see you standing up and you're doing something, and I commend you and the people behind you.
Mhm.
But I think, can we, as, I don't know if you can even answer this question, what are we going forward to get rid of the Band-Aid and get rid of the problem that's causing the bleed to begin with?
That's changing the funding formula entirely, which is what we're doing. I mean, we are advocating for it. We are working with legislators to be at the table. We are invited to the table to change those funding formulas. So that's what we're doing. We're being part of the solution, not part of the problem.
I see you as part of the solution, but the money's going somewhere. And do we see, I know like some of the money's, a lot of the money's going to other parts of. I
Yeah,
keep
$1 billion. It's going to 424 districts all around us. That's where it is.
But it's also going overseas, and when is that going to stop? I'm just, but I have, somebody has to start, as a community, we have to start standing up for our children, that's because we're talking about the children.
You're exactly right, Ms. Engel.
Okay, I just want to put that out there. That's how I feel.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Sitta.
Hi, Ms. Mitchell.
Maria Mitchell here. Thank you, first and foremost, for holding these town halls, as I feel that transparency is key to respect and to trust in the community. And I want to give a shout out to Principal Anders, who I had a detailed discussion with. We were one-on-one on her principal chat the other day, and she really put my mind at ease. And I've been paying attention to everything you've done thus far, the other meetings, the TRS TV interview. So, I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I completely understand what's at stake, completely, between, the losses and the budget. But one thing that always comes to mind for me, and you guys both know me pretty well, is safety.
Sure.
Safety, safety, safety. And the other people I want to thank is our amazing officers in this school. They are the reason I can sleep at night. So thank you a million times over. And I mean that. Every chance I get, I thank them. And I realize, again, I've been paying attention. This is transitional. We're not talking about 100 students right away at high school East.
Right.
But the east side of town is going to get the majority of students, except for those that are part of the academies, of course. So eventually, over time, we're going to have a transition period, and we're going to have more and more students that come to eventually Eastover, definitely intermediate East, and of course, high school East.
Mhm.
So my question is, besides the wonderful officers that we have now, will we be able to have another officer in the bigger schools like intermediate East and high school East? That's
Well,
the first part of my question.
And I can't tell you that we will or we won't, but I'll tell you this. Number one, we won't be able to do anything if we don't have any funding to do anything.
And that's what
number-
Principal
number one.
Andrews said. Yes.
Number two, you're talking about less than 20 kids per grade level, right? So when you come to high school East and you look at about 1,400 students here, Aaron? About 1,400, right? 1,400 students in each, broken down by grade level, broken down by classes, 8 periods a day across the board. Like this, you wouldn't even feel it. You wouldn't feel it at Intermediate East, and you wouldn't feel it at High School East. And the reason why the supports would go to Eastover way down the road. Now, who knows what the enrollment would be at Seaside Heights by then?
Right.
Because you could be talking about 50 children the way that town is being redeveloped. Okay? You could be talking about 50 children. It's gone down about 20, 30% every year in the last 5 years, which is why they're at this crossroads. But that's why those teachers and the supports would go to that school where they would end up.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
One more quick question.
Sure.
Have there been any forecast as to the homeowners as to how our property values may or may not be affected by another school joining Toms River Regional Schools?
It wouldn't at all.
Okay.
It's a different town. Yep.
So it wouldn't really affect people wanting to come to Toms River,
No.
raise their families? Okay,
Nope. Nope.
that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and there's some up here. I'll go to this one. If you want to go up the bleachers.
Yes, I'm just looking for a little clarification. Is it 100 and something kids, or is it all high school kids and elementary?
The question is how many children, right? So right now they have about 175 children pre-K through 6th grade. There's about another 100 children between 7th grade and 12th grade. Those kids would be able to transition, stay at Central. You know what I mean? Like, so, yeah. So you're under 300, and every year that number basically drops. That's the closest proximity, right? So right now we already bus kids, right? And I think we asked that question too. Like, would we offer? We bus kids from Wortley Beach, and I'm sure we have families from here on the other side of the island, right? And they come right past the school to the closest spot. No. No.
Oh, sure. I was just saying, my next question was, would they be rezoning any of our kids?
So the question is rezoning. So No, that population wouldn't constitute any rezoning. And we've done projections and had studies on 5 to 7 year outlooks in Tom's River, the entire community, and where our population has decreased and where it has increased and where it has maintained. And it's really two schools, right? It's City School and North Dover, and those populations have started to go up in the last year, believe it or not. So that wouldn't constitute a redistricting of high schools, middle schools. It's nothing that is even on the table at the moment, right? I don't see that happening anytime soon.
So it's really just 100 and something kids right now that we're talking.
It's less than 300, but the elementary is about 175. Yes.
Hello, nice to meet you. So I have a question. Oh,
Sure.
it's difficult hearing myself. So say if we did lose the voting process, which I don't think we are, because yeah. But what would happen to all the like advanced math teachers and all the other teachers that would be participating in all our intermediate schools and high schools and anything that kids need help with? Would those be cut if
Yeah.
we go into the deficit?
So we have a serious issue because we have a $26.5 million problem. But as I promised everybody in this community and this board, we will not cut a thing. Okay? We will do everything in our power to do any and everything, move mountains to make sure you don't lose one thing, because you don't deserve to. Okay? So you'll never hear out of my vote or my mouth or me sign a piece of paper that takes one opportunity away from you. I will only sign something that will add something to you. Okay? We're not doing it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Mr. Raymond, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Sid. I just wanted to echo, not just my family, but a lot of the community. You, your staff, and the police department, which is also Chief Little, are the leadership of this community. I echo what these two women said about their concerns. We all have concerns, the safety, our property taxes, but with you and with our police department, I think if we stick together, we will see through not just the schools, but other community issues. But I look at you and I saw you as the principal at South, and my kids are living proof. What you and your staff are doing, the principals, the teachers, that's why we're going to be okay, despite a few others. But I think together we can probably solve a lot of problems in this community.
I appreciate that,
you.
Mr. Raymond. But
Absolutely.
Tom's River has always solved their problems collectively. It's not one person. It's everybody working together for a common cause. And in this case, it's our greatest treasure and our only resource, and that's our children. Great questions. Anybody else? Oh, right here. You want to give her the microphone? Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about the staff that'll be coming over from the elementary school.
Sure.
Will they come over with tenure?
Yes. So they would come over with tenure. That is part of the law of a regionalization. So they would come over with their tenure when they come over. But I mean, the first 5 years, they would most likely stay right where they're at with the tenure that they have. Oh. There we go. We have one of the staff members right here. How you doing again?
And that brings me to what this woman just said.
Oh.
Tenured staff is technically teachers, paras,
I-
secretaries, cafeteria workers, and custodial people are not tenured.
We've said this, and you've heard me say it, and I'll say it again for everybody here. Okay? The plan is we take the entire staff, including your secretaries, including your paras, including your custodial.
Okay, you have two tiers of paras. We have one.
I know. So what's going to happen is when we sit down with our unions, and Mr. Doran can attest to it, and I know we talked with Mr. Campbell one time in the room with your education association, right? Monetarily, we'll meet you where you are contractually. Nobody would get hurt in the pocketbook in that transfer over. What your title would look like, I don't have a contract book in front of me. Okay?
Okay, but just so you know, on page 95 of the feasibility study,
I'll
does-
take it. I'll take it. Give it to me.
it does say
give it-
tenured staff.
I know what it says, but I also said
So
what
the
we're doing.
feasibility study only
Well,
looked at,
because that's the law, but we've already said that we're taking everybody.
All right. And my other question is about the, if you vote by mail. According to the website for voting by mail,
Mhm.
the ballots had to be out by February 29th. It's a 45-day.
Yeah, did they say April 9th? They'll be, about April 9th, they'll be hitting the streets, Board of Elections.
Okay, so as of today, there's only 18 mailing days left.
They'll
Because
be
you
out.
have Easter, Good Friday, Good Easter Monday. There's only 18 days left. Now, if you're saying what date?
April 9th, the ballots should be in your mailboxes. That's what the Board of Elections is telling me.
So that doesn't give vote by mail very much time, right? We'll look at, okay, that's it.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just want to, hi, everybody. Mrs. Howe. I just want to say, I used to live in Seaside Park and I moved to Toms River. Oh, and I lived through the Seaside Park school closing and the kids being sent and received to Toms River, and it was awful. It was awful. And when Mr. Sitta, we met when I was on the board, and we had Mr. Gianella. I think he was the superintendent at the time. When Seaside Heights came over, and they said we're going to do this great send and receive and blah blah blah. And when Mr. Sitta came in, I said, I just want you to know this is a no, and I will convince every single person to vote no for any kind of send and receive because it's awful. Because what they did to Seaside Park was they took the kids. It was a K through 6 school. And by the end of Seaside Park, the 5th and 6th grade were in one classroom, and then they just took the 6th graders. You know, it was just too small. So 5th and 6th grade became one classroom, which obviously isn't very good for 6th graders or 5th graders for that matter. But they took the kids to Washington Street, K through 5. And then 6th grade, the kids had to go to Intermediate East. And then 7th grade, they had to go to Central for middle school. So it was just awful. And they, you know, at the time, who was in charge in Toms River said, no, they can stay till 12th grade. But then obviously that superintendent left, and there was really nothing signed that said it would. So then these poor kids in 9th grade, in 10th grade, in 11th grade, some starting their senior year, had to leave Toms River schools and go to Central because their parents couldn't afford the tuition. So when we did the send receive idea, I said, we're not doing this. Absolutely not. And I made this wonderful teacher who taught in Seaside Park, who came over to Toms River, Miss Cosentino. She's in this building now. I don't know if you want to say anything, but I know the teachers from Seaside Park all came over to Toms River, got jobs, unless I think maybe one retired. I think one retired, but she was going to retire anyway. But it is about kids, and I know Mr. Sitta always thinks of kids first whenever he makes a decision. And I know in Seaside Heights, we watched Seaside Park School close, and it was sad. It was, and I'm glad that they're going to give time for the enrollment to drop low to the point where it's not, you know, having 7 kids in your classroom, the same kids all the time is just not a good environment. Like, kids need more people to be around. But doing a regionalization is just better for kids, and I think it's better for all the kids. And I just want to say this: I hope that nobody in this room or in the community of Toms River or Beechwood or Pine Beach of South Toms River says anything about kids in Seaside Heights that's negative. I've heard those kids or kids like that or and they're kids, and that's their children, and we love all kids. And those kids look like our kids, and our kids look like those kids, and they have the same needs just as our kids. And we have to stop talking about kids in such a way that's very it's you would never say that to a child's face, and to say it in public in front of adults is awful. And I just remember they're kids, and they're all the same, and we're going to love them all the same. And just remember, when you hear people say that, just think they're talking about children. They're talking about someone's child, and they're not any different than our own children. They're not. And I just wanted to say that because that's something I keep getting text messages and comments online. Those kids, our kids, these kids, they're kids, and they're amazing, and they're going to be amazing in our district. They're going to be amazing in Seaside Heights, being a part of our school district. And Mr. Sitta, thank you for not doing the send receive, because like I said, it wouldn't have passed anyway. And we would have had to sit through all this for no reason. But of course, we're not telling you how to vote, but regionalization is better than send receive. And we'll love kids in Toms River no matter what town they're from. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Howe.
Watch those heels, right? Hi. I have a question. Like, would anything happen to Central Regional School? And also, like, would it affect them? And do you know when the transferring would happen if we win the vote?
All right, I heard your first part, and the question is, what's going to happen to central regional schools? Um, well, they're slowly not going to have kids. And over the first couple of years, financially, their taxpayers and their school will be made whole because there's a transitional aid process, right? So the $7+ million that we get off of the tax levy will kind of get divided up amongst the savings in Seaside Park, the operation of those children, and the the paying for the central regional students and the transitional aid. And then that gets phased out over time. But the dollar amount is pales in comparison to the dollars amount of the benefits to the Toms River Regional Schools municipalities. I mean, it really does. And my job is to make sure that I am advocating for this community. That's quite the answer to number one. What was number two again?
Uh, when would like the transferring take place? And like, would we be making Central Regional lose money from their tax returns, whatever it's called?
From their taxes?
Yeah.
Would we be making it? Well, they wouldn't have the expenses, and eventually they would lose tax levy dollars to the tune of about $1.5 million a year. But yes, but they wouldn't have any students to spend that money on. Okay. And when would this happen? If it passed, it would start with students in Toms River or us in Hugh J. Boyd in September.
Okay, thank you.
No, I appreciate your questions, my friend. All right. It's almost okay. We got more questions.
Pat always gets off easy on that side.
It's not really a question, but I'd like you to tell everybody about the universal pre-K that our 3- and 4-year-old students have.
Perfect.
About
Yes.
45
Thank you.
of them that will.
Yes, you've been to some talks, so you hear. And again, I have fatigue. This is like meeting number 37. So the benefits and obstacles of universal pre-K. Seaside Heights has universal pre-K, which is about 40 children right now in Seaside
45.
Heights. That pre-K will stay. Will also, with sustainable revenue, allow us to file our application in a couple of weeks for an opportunity to have universal pre-K in Toms River, which is a slow rollout, but a huge benefit to the parents, the young parents, and the grandparents that are watching children in Toms River. So pre-K is not going to go away for Seaside Heights, and the merger could bring pre-K to the entire Toms River Regional Schools District. That's the answer. Thank you. All right, everybody, have a fantastic spring break. Okay, one more. Are you sure?
I was just asked because I understand that there are some Seaside Heights Hugh J. Boyd staff here.
Sure.
And as a former Seaside Park teacher, I just want those of you that are here to know that this truly has been a wonderful opportunity as an educator.